Shut up, listen to me.
Suck my you man.
Listen.
Suck my
You will be here in the court on Monday.
You'll be here sucking my
Well, listen to me now.
Go yourself.
Okay, I'm going to tell you how this is going to work. You either listen or not. I don't care.
I'm through. Can I leave the courtroom?
No.
No, you've got to stay here.
No, I'm not talking to the bastard.
We are going to have the trial Monday week.
No, we are. I ain't going to trial with this lawyer present.
Listen, if you do not...
Suck my you stinking ass cracker.
If you act like this, I will send you out of the courtroom.
Old bitch ass, suck my
Shut up, listen.
Hey, Ryan. Hi, this is Sarah Palin.
Ryan, Donald Trump Jr.
Hogs to win, see you. Hey, everybody, I want y'all to check out a fellow Marines podcast.
My name is Ted Nugent, and I got a call from my buddy Ryan F. Samuels, and he wants me to tell you that he's a working hard, playing all-American son of a who is celebrating God, family, country.
Welcome to the Ryan Samuels Show, one of the top political podcasts in the United States, where we have a healthy distrust for government and mainstream media. The Ryan Samuels Show is a raw, unfiltered look at American politics. Follow on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Rumble, and all podcast platforms. Here is your host, Ryan Samuels.
Hello, Patriots. Big news yesterday. The Supreme Court has come down and they have ruled against Texas. Now, if you don't know the basis of this ruling, you do know, I'm certain, especially if you've been watching this show, that the border is just completely wide open, and it's a disaster. It's a disaster for the country. It's a disaster for the people in these border states who are being put at risk and in danger. And the governor Abbott decided to put razor wire up in the Rio Grande and stop people from crossing. The Biden administration sued the state of Texas in the Supreme Court and basically made the argument that you have no right to do this, that the states do not regulate immigration, the federal government does. Now, say that how you will, take that how you will, agree with it, disagree with it. That is where the decision was made by the Supreme Court, where they agreed that the state does not have the right to regulate immigration. So, and one of the reasons for that is, at the very founding of this country, we had major disagreements. This was not I don't know how much you know about history, but I'll give you a little just crash course on the American Revolution, and specifically proceeding after it, and more specifically proceeding after George Washington declined to take a third term. That's where the turmoil really began. So you had the Federalists, and like John Adams, Alexander Hamilton, who were all members of George Washington's cabinet, who wanted major federal government and even monarchy. They wanted George Washington to be a king. They wanted presidents to be a king. That's what they wanted. And then they wanted to be a hereditary monarchy where George Washington's son would become the next president of the United States. That's what they actually wanted, the Federalists. Now, Jefferson and the Republicans, as they were called, which is appropriate because that's what we are today, of the same mindset, that absolutely not. He should not be a king. The federal government should be limited. We should be up to the states, which is why they had the Articles of Confederation, which superseded the Constitution. And then they got rid of the Confederate states and instituted the Constitution, which Jefferson argued was bad for the country. Jefferson didn't really agree with the Constitution. Jefferson was in France at the time, but he was arguing through Madison, who was there. And he had said that, there's no reason for a Constitution. You just need to make a couple more articles to fix the things that you want. I mean, that's it. There's no reason to scrap all of that and begin over again, especially when it certainly ran the risk of changing the government that they had envisioned, a republic. So that's a little crash course in the situation. Now, where the Supreme Court comes in is that the Supreme Court was not placed and designed to be supreme over anybody. even though that's the way that it is today. And the way that it is today is from a very specific case of Marbury versus Madison. So you had James Madison, who served under Thomas Jefferson after John Adams lost his re-election campaign. Thomas Jefferson took office, but John Adams had appointed a ton of people that would just fight Jefferson at every turn. Like he wouldn't be able to get anything done with all these people because it was a calamitous election. They wound up, this is where their friendship completely broke off, even though they made up later in life. That's a different story. However, Jefferson did not want these appointees. So, Marbury was appointed as a judge and said, hey, I'm here for my commission. And Madison was like, yeah, no, we're just not going to go ahead and do that. So he took him to the Supreme Court, and that's where the case of Marbury versus Madison came in, ruled on by John Marshall, who was a Federalist, right? So remember, there was a major contention between these two parties. It was super government. I want everything. I want a totalitarian government versus we want like no government at all. Like that's really the way that it was. And I think we kind of grow up thinking that everybody was in the founding and certainly right thereafter were some sort of utopian Republican people who just saw this vision of complete American freedom. And that was the case during the fight for independence. But the second some of them got power, like John Adams, all of a sudden they were monarchists. All of a sudden they were totalitarian governments. So in the case of Marbury versus Madison, John Marshall decided that a part of that case was unconstitutional. That's where judicial review came in. Okay. And that's very important because the Supreme Court now has ultimate authority based on the precedent of that case. So that is not in the Constitution. That is not in the vision of any of the founders. That was a man ruling on a case who granted the court that much power. So there's certain pretense in law that where they always try to let the law stand. Whatever the decision was made before them, they try to uphold it. So you're talking over the course of hundreds of years. Now the Supreme Court is not looking to the Constitution to see if it's constitutional. They're not looking to the state. Does the state has the right? They're looking at cases that had preceded them and what those justices have thought about it. That's kind of how the system works now. So when everybody's mad at Amy Coney Barrett for deciding on behalf of the federal government, she is a judge, and she's a good one. She may be conservative. She may be a Catholic and, very Christian, very religious, highly educated, highly intelligent, highly conservative. She's not going to allow that to thwart her judgment. So the Supreme Court has come back and they have ruled against. And Amy Coney Barrett is one that ruled in favor of the federal government because she's ruling on cases that preceded her. So that's in a nutshell. We could talk about this for 48 hours straight. I mean, there are millions of cases, not millions, but thousands of cases that have happened with the Supreme Court and that have established review or judicial review or precedent or whatever you want to call it. So that's kind of where we're at today. And Thomas Jefferson was so against judicial review. I mean, openly, out in public. He had said all this is going to do is increase the power of the federal government. That's all it's going to do. And over time, the federal government is just going to become more and more powerful. And that's what we've seen throughout the years. If you look at our history through a microscope, we've seen a slow walk towards totalitarianism. And left or right, it doesn't matter what your political beliefs are. That's where we're heading. Put your political beliefs aside, and if you look at the timeline and the increased control, the increased formation of federal agencies, DEA, FBI, United States Marshal Service, you name it, that's where we're heading. The increasing authority of the President of the United States to write laws through executive orders. A President of the United States cannot write laws. Sorry. That's not how this works. He doesn't decide a law. Jefferson had said that it is up to the Congress to interpret the Constitution, Congress and the Senate and the Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court was held equal to these bodies. It was not held above these bodies, which is what they have claimed themselves, that they're held above these bodies. He also believed that the states have a right to interpret the Constitution as they saw fit, and that it shouldn't be interfered with because the states are sovereign. The states are countries. That's the way it was. That's why they're called states. You ever hear, the state of Ukraine, the state of Georgia, not our Georgia, but over in Eastern Europe, or Africa, the state, all the states, Kenya is a state. They're countries in a continent. So New York, Pennsylvania, Florida, countries inside of a continent. The only difference is that we made an alliance with each other through the Constitution, that we are united to help support, protect, and defend this land, this continent that we're on. That was the premise of it. So each country is supreme over their own people. That was the premise. Now, that's why you have the Electoral College, because you, as a citizen of your state, do not elect the President of the United States. You elect your state and local legislators, and then they elect the President of the United States through proxy. And that's the basis of what has happened. But we've gone well beyond that. We're marching towards a popular vote, which is just going to secure totalitarian government forever. I mean, that's going to be the end of it. There's only one thing more dangerous than that, and that is digital currency. But when we are talking about this specific incident and the court's authority through precedent, through all the laws, they have it. That's it. They gave it to themselves. And it has gone uncontested really since, legally. But when the court has ruled that the federal agents can go in and remove the razor wire. Okay. Everybody's extremely upset at the court. I mean, Democrats. I was on Twitter last night, and I was in one of the Twitter spaces where everybody just goes in and they can talk. I forget whose it was, but there were a ton of Democrats in there who live on these border states, and they were saying, you do not understand how bad this is. This is absolutely horrific, and the Supreme Court is wrong. Well, they're not wrong. We and our ancestors have permitted the power of the federal government to go that far. So the Supreme Court is going to rule on the precedents. And that's the way that it is. Before we go any further, I got a couple of videos here. I got a tweet from Tucker Carlson that everybody's heads are exploding about. Make sure you hit that like button. Follow this video for more content, or this channel for more content. And if you're listening on the podcast, please leave a review. So after this came down, Tucker Carlson tweeted this out. So it's unanimous. Everyone in power, from the White House to the hedge fund managers to the Supreme Court of the United States, has decided to destroy the country by allowing it to be invaded. That leaves the population to defend itself. Where are the men of Texas? Why aren't they protecting their state and the nation? So people are saying this is a call to arms. Tucker Carlson is trying to start a revolution or a civil war, whatever you want to call it. Okay. Now, people are very upset at this tweet, but also people are very upset at this situation. and saying that basically what's Tucker saying, even before Tucker said it, that nobody's helping us. These people are coming in. Not all of them are robbing us, but we're being robbed. They're giving them $3,000 each on a gift card. The federal government is handing these people, hundreds of thousands of them, millions of them, $3,000 each and a cell phone. So people are absolutely furious. Now, what happens if the people of Texas go ahead and they decide to take this matter into their own hands? I mean, that is a phenomenal question. And do they have a right to do it? I mean, based on precedent, based on laws, the answer is no. But if you base it on the natural law theory, which, you know, Augustine Aquinas, Thomas More, you guys hear me talk about those names all the time, then yes, you have an inherent right to defend yourself and your property, your life, liberty, and property. You have a natural right given to you by God if you are religious, or just by your humanity if you're not. By being a human being, you know, there's a certain order in things, and there's a certain way that we all agree that we are going to act without even talking to each other about it. We understand that if we decide to rob somebody, that we place ourselves at risk because that person may shoot us or kill us. That's an unwritten law. It's part of the natural law. It's a social contract. We kind of understand these things. But let's watch a few video clips, one from the Hill, and let's see what they have to say.
Are already going. Buckle up here. Welcome back to the Hill, as it was a big win for President Biden against the state of Texas today. The Supreme Court siding with the administration, clearing the way for Border Patrol agents to remove razor wire along a busy stretch of the southern border. Now, that wire was destroyed by Texas Governor Greg Abbott, or at least ordered to be destroyed, whose office responded to the ruling this way, saying, quote, "The case is ongoing, and Governor Abbott will continue fighting to defend Texas's property and its constitutional authority to secure the border." Scott, Ford, two attorneys, Democrat, Republican. Come on in.
Well, go ahead, counsel. The law has no politics in it, quite frankly.
Oh, really? Is that so?
You think this was a good decision, and Ford's already saying they're going to start sending more cases out.
I think this, let me just say this. I think this decision's a shame. The Border Patrol Union agrees with me on this. I knew that John Roberts was not going to have a spine because of the 2014 previous ruling. As the Supreme Court justice, he has to follow stare decisis. But when it comes to Amy Coney Barrett, I figured she'd fight a little bit tougher. I do think we're going to revisit this in another format because this argument about where illegal immigration takes place, where does it start, where does it end, how much of it is a federal issue, how much of it isn't, is still uncharted territory.
It's not uncharted. You're just wrong about that, and I'll tell you why. Because it's not going to change. States' rights, regardless of how conservatives want to see it, they have no jurisdiction over immigration law. It sits squarely within the federal bucket, and it's not going to change. I don't care who the justices are. And what the court said here was they don't have jurisdiction to put up wires, to kill people, to impact immigration, no matter how much.
Or to protect American citizens.
You know, no, they didn't say that either.
Or to protect American citizens.
What they said was you have no jurisdiction to do it. Those wires are inhumane, and as a result,
what's inhumane is Biden's
You think this is just a test case?
I think this is.
And what did you say during the break? More cases.
There's going to be more cases, and you're going to keep sending them up there like flares on the 4th of July.
Okay. The decision won't change.
Denise, Amisha, the Biden administration says the wire prevents agents from reaching migrants who have already crossed over the border into the U.S. Are they right on the policy front here?
They absolutely are. And to a point that was made just a moment ago, that this is not only inhumane, people are dying, but in addition to that, we continue to see time and time again Republicans bring forth more ideas that are just as bad, from the moat with the...
So they're saying that people are dying because there was somebody who tried to cross with the wire and the Border Patrol couldn't get to them or something, and they drowned. I think it was a mother and maybe a child or something. I'm not really sure. However, somebody did die, and they're blaming the razor wire, where you could just blame the people for not wanting to come in. So they're calling it inhumane. I mean, that's a stretch. I don't think it's inhumane to block the border. I don't. You enter into your own risk when you're doing this illegal activity, and when you understand that there's razor wire out there, because you can see it before you go, that you're not going to be able to cross that, or it may hinder you from crossing that, or just swimming across the Rio Grande in itself, to go into a foreign nation that has a closed border is highly risky for you to do. And, it's not the fault of the governor or the razor wire that these individuals chose to take that path. Now, what they're kind of saying is that, which touches on what I was saying before, that the federal jurisdiction is on the border, and that's true. I mean, that's absolutely true. There's a lot of things that the state can do, and like the one conservative attorney was saying, is that there's a different angle they're going to take, essentially. And, they're going to fight it a different way. But there's a lot of things that they can do. They can arrest illegal immigrants. They can throw them in jail. They can gather them all up and ship them out of their state and send them to Washington, D.C., like Ron DeSantis did. He put them all on a plane and shipped them to Martha's Vineyard. And then, of course, immediately they threw them out of there because they didn't want them there. But that is, there's a lot of things that they can do. Local sheriffs can deputize citizens and have them go out and arrest illegal immigrants, or have them stand on the border. There's things that the states can do. There's problems that the states can cause by utilizing the National Guard, which when we had militias, it would have been a lot easier for the state to order the militia around, because the National Guard is just a sidestep to posse comitatus, which is a law that protects citizens from the federal government using federal troops against its own citizens. So what they have is the National Guard, which is the United States Army, that is utilized in emergency situations against its own citizens, saying, well, they're not federal troops, they're state troops, but they're not really. They're kind of a hybrid, which in my vision is definitely 100% a violation of posse comitatus. Now, the Texas, Greg Abbott, they're not going to stop. I mean, this is Texas. They don't care. They're talking about, the word secession is arising, which is highly, highly unpredictable. Secession is an act of peace. It's not an act of war. An act of war would be Texas governor getting all the troops together and then invading the federal government, saying that, what you're doing is wrong, we're taking this over. That would be an act of war. But by saying that we as the states created the federal government, then therefore we can withdraw from that contract at any time. We created you. You didn't create us. So that is the basic argument for secession. And that's kind of what happened in the Civil War. They seceded, which is an act of peace. It wasn't an act of aggression. It was Lincoln who preceded the act of aggression onto the states, because he said, you're not allowed to, so we're going to kill you. Basically makes no sense. The South didn't say, we're going to invade the North because we want slaves everywhere. That's not even close to what had happened. They just said, we don't want to be part of the federal government anymore. And you have failed your obligation to us. You're eliminating states' rights, and we're going to go ahead and secede. Now, slavery is 1,000,000% wrong, and it's a violation of constitutional rights. But the right to secede is also part of your agreement, kind of like we seceded from Great Britain when we wrote the Declaration of Independence. It was a breakup letter.
Alligators to more and more issues related to policies that are just wild and detrimental to these individuals. This is a federal issue. The federal government needs to handle it. Congress needs to come up with a plan. Republicans need to get off their tails and agree to one that works, and let's just move along. 302,000
migrant encounters in the month of December, Denise.
I mean, because I was on the Immigration Journal at Georgetown Law.
So understand that 302,000 encounters are people, or that's the number that the border agents have seen and touched and talked to. Remember that. That's not how many people crossed. That's how many people got caught crossing. In 1 month, 302,000.
Law school. And I remember when we were talking about whether or not to give amnesty to folks as opposed to whether or not we use razor wire at the border. And I think one of the travesties in all of this is that the Border Patrol hasn't been empowered to actually do its actual job, which is why we have these reactions from the Texans. And I think that politically, when I look at it through just a pure political lens, I think it's not a winning argument for Republicans to stand on to see what's happening to the people coming on board, even if you're right on the law.
You agree with her there?
No, I don't actually, because Joe Biden's approval on the border is 18%
I
according to
agree with
ABC poll. When it comes to the term securing the border and what's happened, when you had
100%.
kids locked out of their
Yeah,
school
we're
in
not
New York
arguing
to
that
house
point,
illegal
Courtney.
immigrants, that is
Yeah,
the
we're
issue
not
that the
arguing that
Republicans are going to
That's
carry
not
into
my
the general
point.
election. That is the point.
No, that's not my point.
Okay.
You're
What's your
arguing a
point?
different point. My point is when you look at it from just the average everyday Joe perspective of what's going on with the migration patterns, you have the human side and you also have the side that says we must enforce these laws. And loving your neighbor means loving both the people that are here and the people who are being trespassed against, as well as those who are trespassing. And I think it's a losing argument when you start seeing the images of the people who are coming over for the Republicans in the long run.
CBS
And
News
this is a conservative Supreme Court who ruled in favor of Biden.
CBS News poll, how do you rate the president's handling of the border? Only a third approve, basically 2/3 disapprove. All right, thank you for watching. And make sure you go to joinnn.com.
Nobody approves of the southern border situation. 32% is highly inaccurate from other polls that I have seen and witnessed. But the premise here is that the federal government won. And that one attorney is accurate when he said they won with a conservative Supreme Court because the federal government does have jurisdiction over this. Now, the federal government's policy is wrong. The federal government's actions are wrong, but their authority over it is legitimate. So you can't go to the Supreme Court and fight that. You have to impeach Joe Biden, impeach Mayorkas. Like, these are the things that Congress has to do and actually get them taken out of office and removed. And people need to go vote them out of office. It is highly unlikely that Joe Biden is going to win the presidential election in 2024. Highly unlikely. The only way that's going to happen, I see, is if Donald Trump gets convicted of a felony and goes to jail. But even then, I think he might get reelected. There was a congressman during John Adams' term who was arrested for referring to John Adams as his rotundity because he was a little fat. And Congressman Lyons was arrested and convicted for sedition through the Silence and Sedition Acts. These were the extreme Federalists. The second president of the United States who helped draft and was on the board of the committee, not board, of the Declaration of Independence, had a congressman arrested for calling him chubby and placed into jail. So he ran his reelection campaign while he was in jail, and he won. So there is a historical act to that because the notion, the second president of the United States violating and trampling on the Constitution was absolutely absurd. And that is what we're seeing with Donald Trump. I mean, it is obvious and clearly they are doing this to stop him from running for president. They would not be doing this to Donald Trump if he had finished his second term and would be running and didn't have the opportunity to run for president. They would not be. And I pray for the people that he's going to go after when he gets elected president. He says he's going to be impartial. He says he's not going to retaliate, but who couldn't? I would hope that he would place in he would position himself to make sure that that kind of stuff doesn't happen to future presidents and secures the nation from further encroachments of the deep state and the federal government. This is Ryan Samuels. Thank you very much for tuning in. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and we will see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to the Ryan Samuels Show. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.